Her former friend had only one motive in inviting her to the wedding: to humiliate her in front of hundreds of guests. Whispered comments rippled through the grand ballroom. "Oh my God, she must have picked that dress up at a thrift shop." Another old classmate sneered through clenched teeth. "Still living that poor girl life, huh? Didn't your embarrassing past shame you enough?" Just then, the bride appeared. Lips painted crimson, a crystal-encrusted gown sweeping the marble floor, and her icy voice cut through the opulence of the $1,000,000 affair. "I told you not to invite her. This is so mortifying." Security officers immediately moved in. They escorted Hannah out of the main reception area, unaware that they had made a terrible mistake. She was the groom's greatest benefactor and the wife of a billionaire. Later, seated at her desk among stacks of mail and paperwork, Hannah's eyes flicked to one invitation in particular. There, on thick ivory stock stamped in gleaming gold foil, was her name, Hannah Jackson, sent by none other than Vanessa Crawford. It had been more than 15 years since high school graduation, and Hannah never would have guessed that a former classmate who had all but forgotten her would suddenly remember her now, on such a momentous day. Vanessa Crawford was now a household name on American social media, with millions of followers and every post racking up massive likes, comments, and shares. Hannah, by contrast, lived a quiet, unassuming life, far from glitz or spectacle. She couldn't help feeling skeptical of this surprise invitation. Inside the card, Vanessa's penmanship spelled out a brief but effusively warm note. "Dearest Hannah, it would mean the world to me to have you here on my big day. You simply must attend. Vanessa." Hannah held the invitation in her hand, hesitation fluttering in her chest. But her compassionate nature won out. People change over time, she told herself. Maybe Vanessa genuinely wanted to reconnect, to bridge the gap between past and present. And after all, Hannah truly wanted to offer her congratulations. With that in mind, she decided to go. Hundreds of miles away, Vanessa sat in her luxurious New York penthouse, scrolling through the guest list on her laptop with a calculating smile. Her eyes paused at Hannah Jackson, and she allowed herself a small, cruel grin. Turning to her inner circle, Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica gathered around a cocktail table. She said with mock sweetness, "Do you remember Hannah?" Ashley laughed harshly, raising an eyebrow in derision. "Is that the bookworm who always wore those cheap outfits?" Vanessa nodded smugly. "Exactly. I've invited her to the wedding, a very special guest." Leaning back on the sofa, Jessica ran her fingers through her glossy blonde hair, eyes sparkling with anticipation. "What are you planning? Don't tell me you're going to let her strut in here looking so provincial." Vanessa's smile grew colder. "Oh, it's even better than that. She'll be the center of attention, just not in the way she hopes." Brittany raised her cocktail glass in a toast, her voice dripping with malice. "Perfect. This wedding will be the most humiliating day of her life." Their glasses clicked together, laughter bubbling up like poison. And all the while, Hannah had no idea she was stepping into a trap, one meticulously laid to shame her in front of America's wealthiest and most powerful elite. A few weeks later, as golden, honey-toned sunlight gently poured over the emerald waters of Miami, it illuminated the grandeur of the Azure, one of the city's most exclusive hotels, perched dramatically on a cliff where only the wealthiest and most powerful dare tread. Hannah stepped out of the taxi and paused for a moment, awestruck by the hotel's splendor. Her simple light blue linen dress fluttered in the sea breeze, and her thick black hair was swept up to reveal a graceful profile and sun-kissed skin. She hesitated, realizing she stood out in precisely the way she least wanted to among the elegantly dressed guests making their way inside. Inside the grand foyer, crystal chandeliers sparkled like frozen raindrops suspended in midair. Renowned CEOs, film stars, chart-topping musicians and the ultra, rich mingled in couture gowns and tailored tuxedos, champagne flutes in hand. The air was a heady blend of luxury perfumes, rose petals, and white orchids. From the far side of the room, Vanessa emerged in a jewel-studded evening gown, $1 million diamond necklace glinting around her neck. Every eye turned to her, the formidable bride at the heart of this high society affair. She smiled confidently, scanning the crowd for Hannah. Standing beside her, Ashley tilted her head and whispered with thinly veiled anticipation, "You sure she's coming?" "Absolutely," Vanessa replied curtly, her gaze still sweeping the room. Her eyes lit up with satisfaction as she spotted Hannah entering through the main doors. And there she is, just as downtrodden as ever. Hannah advanced slowly, offering a polite smile to the servers lining the aisle. But after only a few steps, several guests began to take notice of her understated appearance. Quiet murmurs arose. "Who wears linen to a luxury wedding?" A woman in a sweeping ball gown hissed, her tone drenched in mockery. "Must be some mistake," murmured a man as he adjusted his gleaming gold Rolex. "She doesn't look like someone we invited." Moments later, Vanessa approached Hannah with a saccharine smile that barely masked her razor-sharp eyes. She hugged Hannah lightly and whispered with velvet cruelty, "Oh, Hannah, you're just the same, so charmingly simple." Caught off guard by the faux warmth, Hannah steadied herself and replied sincerely, "I'm honored to be here for your wedding. Congratulations, Vanessa." Vanessa's smile sharpened. She glanced conspiratorially at her friends, stifling giggles behind their hands. "Oh, trust me, you'll be the most unforgettable guest tonight, Hannah." With that, Vanessa turned away, her glittering hair brushing against Hannah's shoulder as she swept off through the crowd. Her friends followed, eyes alight with a mixture of curiosity and contempt, leaving Hannah alone in the vast hall, an odd sense of isolation settling over her. Across the room, small clusters of guests formed, sneaking furtive glances at the modestly dressed black woman standing amid the opulence. Whispers spread, speculating about her background and her bold choice to appear in this extravagant setting. A flicker of unease crossed Hannah's mind, but her resolute spirit held firm. She straightened her posture and stepped deeper into the ballroom, determined to ignore the prying eyes and malicious whispers. On the distant stage, Vanessa watched her from her podium, eyes ice, cold, and lips curved in a knowing half. Smile. For Vanessa, this was only the beginning. Whatever she had planned next would ensure that Hannah would never forget this night, unaware, still, that she had been the target from the very start. Hannah moved deeper into the grand hall, forcing herself to stay composed despite the ever-thickening stares around her. She approached the reception desk, where a young attendant, her golden hair swept into a high bun and a gleaming name tag reading "Caitlin" pinned to her blouse, was busily checking the guest list on a tablet. Caitlin looked up, her pale blue eyes briefly scanning Hannah from head to toe with a mix of suspicion and mild disdain. Before Hannah could speak, the clerk offered a polite but pointedly cool tone. "Excuse me, ma'am. The staff service entrance is around the side. If you need a uniform change, please follow the hallway over there." Hannah froze for a heartbeat, a bitter sting rising in her chest. Though she'd grown accustomed to such misunderstandings, being treated this way in full view of so many powerful onlookers still hurt. She inhaled slowly, gathering her composure, and replied with quiet dignity, "I'm actually an invited guest for tonight's wedding." She held out the elegant white invitation embossed in gold foil, her voice gentle yet firm. Caitlin's expression shifted to surprise, as she took the card and examined it closely. Her eyes traced the name, Hannah Jackson, and for a moment her face registered awkwardness. She glanced at her tablet again, then, after a meticulous check, gave a reluctant nod and forced a courteous smile, though her cool skepticism lingered. "I'm so sorry for the mix. Up, ma'am, please go right on in." Her words weren't loud, but they carried far enough to catch the curious attention of nearby guests. Instantly, word spread. A simply dressed black woman had nearly been mistaken for a server. Gossip rippled through the ranks of the ultra, wealthy and powerful attendees, proud of their social standing. Before long, curious and judgmental glances converged on Hannah from every corner of the room. Whispers floated over the clink of crystal. "Wow, she really got invited. Looks like Vanessa wants to pull off something special tonight. One very interesting guest." Nearby, a high-powered finance CEO nursing a cocktail smirked as he shared the news with a friend. "See that? I bet Vanessa picked her to be tonight's highlight." Not far off, a famous TV actress covered her mouth and sneered just loud enough for those around to hear. How bizarre! Why on earth would the bride bring someone like that here? From across the hall, Vanessa watched the scene unfold, a discreet, satisfied curl tugging at her lips. She exchanged a knowing glance with Ashley and Jessica, each of them brimming with wicked delight at how quickly the chatter about Hannah was spreading. "Well, your plan's working even better than I expected, Vanessa," Ashley murmured, her tone thick with satisfaction. Vanessa's eyes gleamed with icy intent as she whispered back, "This is only the beginning. Tonight, Hannah will learn exactly where she belongs." Meanwhile, Hannah stood tall, desperately maintaining calm on her face, even as prejudiced stares and hushed judgments swirled around her. Little did she know this was merely the opening act in a carefully orchestrated sequence of humiliations, designed by Vanessa and her friends to publicly shame her, turning Hannah into the punchline of a lavish celebration where wealth and glamour were the only measures of a person's worth. The cruel whispers hadn't stopped. They drifted through the lavish hall like icy gusts, seeping into every grand corner. Hannah forced herself to remain calm as she made her way toward the long banquet table, its surface lavishly adorned with white orchids and softly scented candles. She hoped a little distance from the skeptical stares would offer some comfort. But Vanessa and her friends clearly had no intention of letting her be for even a moment. From across the room, Vanessa caught Ashley's eye. Ashley, the Instagram star with millions of followers, famous for flaunting her extravagant lifestyle online. Ashley smirked knowingly, picked up her champagne flute, and glided over to Hannah with deliberately provocative steps. Tall and statuesque in a figure. Hugging red dress, Ashley overshadowed Hannah as she greeted her in a saccharine tone that dripped with false sweetness. "Hey there, cutie," she purred, letting the word hang as if daring Hannah to recognize the sting behind it. "I didn't expect any guests to show up tonight in such simple attire." Hannah looked up, keeping her calm exterior, and replied softly but firmly, "Hi, Ashley. I'm just here to congratulate Vanessa. Didn't think I needed anything fancier." Ashley laughed, a high, mocking trill that drew more eyes to the scene, and glanced over her shoulder at Brittany and Jessica, who had just arrived. Brittany, the young CEO of a major U.S. cosmetics brand, her golden hair and designer dress gleaming, stared down at Hannah with thinly veiled scorn. "Honestly, Hannah," she sneered, "it takes guts to stroll in here wearing something like that. Handmade at a flea market, maybe?" Jessica, the well-known TV host, chimed in conspiratorially, loud enough for everyone to hear. No, no, Brittany. I think it must be a family heirloom from her grandma." The three of them burst into cruel laughter, ensuring every guest in the hall was watching. Hannah froze, her face burning, her heart pounding. She'd steeled herself for moments like this, but their callousness still cut deeply. Sensing Hannah's stunned silence, Ashley ramped up the humiliation. She raised her expensive phone, switched on the camera, and snapped several shots of Hannah, deliberately choosing angles that accentuated her simple look and uneasy expression. "Smile for us, Hannah. You're gonna go viral," Ashley called out, her sarcasm blatant. "My followers are going to love this refreshingly real, unbelievably plain snapshot." A few feet away, Vanessa watched with a discreet, satisfied curl at the corner of her mouth. Her eyes glittered as she observed, knowing that soon images of Hannah's modest linen dress amid the opulent crowd would blaze across social media as the next big mockery. Seconds after Ashley posted the photos to Instagram, her phone buzzed relentlessly with likes and comments. Brittany and Jessica followed suit, uploading their own shots with biting captions like, "When you try to fit into a world that's not made for you." Hannah, the bravest guest tonight in her linen dress chasing high society dreams. A very special guest in every sense. Guests around them pulled out their phones, discovering the posts and laughing in muted tones, tiny stabs of shame piercing Hannah with each chuckle. She felt isolated and wounded, her eyes burning, but she fought back tears, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. "Looks like she's really stealing the show tonight, huh?" Brittany called out loud enough for the whole table to hear. "We should give her an award for the best budget fashion at a luxury wedding." Vanessa stepped forward, placing a light hand on Hannah's shoulder, her voice silky yet venomous. "Hannah, I'm so sorry. My friends can be a bit blunt, but they're just telling the truth. Hope you're not taking it personally." Then Vanessa stepped back to stand with Ashley and Brittany, the three exchanging triumphant glances as Hannah's face paled under the sting of their barbs. Hannah inhaled deeply, bracing herself. She refused to show weakness, yet deep down her heart ached, burdened by shame, hurt, and disappointment at how cold and cruel people could be. What she didn't know was that tonight was only the beginning of the string of cruel spectacles Vanessa and her clique had planned. They intended to make Hannah the public punchline, attacking her dignity and pride without mercy in this glittering setting that measured worth by wealth and glamour alone. The mocking laughter and scornful glances grew sharper, wrapping around Hannah like a cold, malicious mist. She fought to keep her composure, telling herself she couldn't break, but the judging eyes and public insults kept escalating, far beyond anything she'd ever imagined enduring. Just minutes after Ashley posted that photo, dozens of guests in the hall were already pulling out their phones, some even live streaming, narrating their cruel commentary on Hannah without a shred of restraint. The venomous remarks rang out clearly in the opulent space, each wave battering at her pride. A sharply dressed businesswoman in a sleek black dress raised her phone toward Hannah and sneered loudly for all to hear. "Look at this, everyone, can you believe it?" A black guest waddling in wearing that shabby linen dress at a high society wedding. Who on earth let her in here? A chorus of laughter erupted around her, tightening the knot in Hannah's chest. Nearby, a middle-aged tycoon, owner of some major firm, added his disdain in a booming voice. "Maybe Vanessa hired her for some comedy routine, right? But honestly, it's not funny. I'd say it's just pathetic." Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica stood shoulder to shoulder, their amusement perfectly synchronized as they watched Hannah grow more flustered under the crowd's pressure. Brittany, the young cosmetics magnate with glossy blonde hair and a designer gown, brushed her hair back, and whispered triumphantly to Vanessa, "You're a genius, Vanessa. One little invitation and she's become tonight's biggest joke." Vanessa said nothing at first, her icy gaze fixed on Hannah as she savored every flicker of panic and helplessness across her old friend's face. Tonight, she vowed, Hannah would never forget this humiliation. With that, Vanessa stepped forward into the center of the gathering, raising her voice just enough to draw every eye in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her smile sweet but her tone cutting, "I sincerely apologize if Miss Hannah's appearance has made any of you uncomfortable. I truly tried to be gracious, but I never imagined a guest could dress and behave so inappropriately." Hannah felt her body tremble and her cheeks burn under Vanessa's ruthless words. She couldn't believe a former classmate could be so heartless, so willing to degrade her in front of all these people. Before Hannah could even respond, Vanessa continued in an exaggeratedly solemn voice, magnifying the moment. "I'm frankly embarrassed and uneasy to continue hosting her at such a prestigious event. For the comfort and safety of our other guests, I'm afraid we must ask her to leave immediately." On cue, Vanessa waved to the security officers standing nearby. Two tall, uniformed men approached Hannah. One, looking awkward yet polite, gently said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have to escort you out. Please cooperate to avoid any further trouble." Hannah's heart clenched painfully. Tears threatened to spill, but she held them back. She scanned the room, hoping someone, anyone, would speak up or show a shred of compassion. Instead, she was met with a sea of gleeful faces waiting to watch the spectacle unfold. At that moment, Jessica raised her phone to film the entire scene, narrating with the thrill of a live host. "This is the highlight of the night, folks. Our special guest, Hannah Jackson, is about to be kicked out of this luxury wedding for dressing inappropriately and embarrassing the bride. Talk about a lesson in knowing your place." Laughter and jeers surged again as phones whirred, capturing Hannah's forced exit like the grand finale of a show they'd all paid to see. Ashley glanced at Vanessa with a triumphant grin and whispered excitedly, "What a night to remember. She'll never forget this wedding." Vanessa tilted her head in a satisfied smirk, her gaze never leaving Hannah's shrinking figure. She reveled in having reduced her former friend to tears, but she knew this was only the opening act in her plan to utterly destroy Hannah's dignity tonight. Meanwhile, Hannah took heavy, shamed steps toward the exit, each footfall carrying the weight of humiliation and heartbreak. The laughter and whispers faded behind her as she left the glittering hall, but the sting of their cruelty would stay with her long after the doors closed. The mocking laughter and cutting comments crashed in behind Hannah like a hail of icy blades, each barb slicing at her heart. Two security officers, Marcus and Ryan, faces clouded with awkward sympathy, slowly guided her toward the exit. They clearly didn't want to be part of this cruelty, but Vanessa's orders, her absolute authority at the event, left them no choice but to comply. Marcus, a tall black man with deeply empathetic eyes, leaned in and spoke softly so as not to wound her further. "I'm so sorry we have to do this. I'm just doing my job, please understand." Hannah looked up at him, mustering a faint, grateful smile despite her humiliation. "I know, don't worry, I don't blame you." But no words could stem the tide of shame and disappointment swelling inside her. With every step she took away from the glittering hall, her isolation among the uncaring crowd became more painfully clear. As they moved, guests drawn into the spectacle pressed closer, slinging fresh insults. "Does she think this is a costume party?" a woman in a sequined gown called out, loud enough for Hannah to hear every mocking syllable. "Maybe she got invited by mistake, thought this was a block party in the slums," added a tuxedoed man, eager for laughs from his neighbors. Their laughter battered Hannah's resolve, weighing her down like lead. She lowered her gaze, trying to avoid the cruel stares, but each look felt like an invisible needle piercing her resolve. From across the ballroom, Vanessa watched with triumphant satisfaction. She whispered to Brittany and Ashley, who stood beside her. "See that? Now Hannah knows she'll never belong here." Ashley sneered, raising her phone to live stream the scene, her voice brimming with glee and malice. "Hey friends, check this out. Proof you should know your limits. Here's our special guest, Hannah Jackson, getting kicked out for being too rural." Instantly, hundreds of hateful comments flooded in, fueling Ashley's triumphant grin. Just then, Jessica, the celebrity host and Vanessa's closest ally, saw a chance to add a sting that none would forget. She grabbed a full glass of red wine from a nearby table, flashed a sweet but icy smile, and walked up to Hannah. "Oh, our poor, dear Hannah," Jessica cooed, feigning concern. "You look so stressed. I'll help you relax a bit." Before Hannah could react, Jessica accidentally slipped, raising the glass and drenching Hannah's simple linen dress in deep red wine. The stain bloomed like a dark wound across the fabric. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Hannah," Jessica gasped pretend. Apology, covering her mouth but betraying her triumph in her eyes. "But you might prefer this bold new look." The surrounding guests erupted in laughter, their jeers crashing over Hannah in relentless waves. She felt her world shatter, each shard of her dignity ground to dust by their public ridicule. Marcus and Ryan exchanged embarrassed glances. Marcus quietly handed Hannah a tissue, his eyes full of regret. "I'm so sorry, Hannah." Trembling, she took the tissue and dabbed at the wine stain. It wouldn't erase the stain or the humiliation, but it was a small stand for her fading dignity. She inhaled deeply, forcing herself not to cry in front of her tormentors. Vanessa, Jessica, Ashley, and Brittany clustered together, their faces alight with smug satisfaction at the flawless cruelty of their scheme. Vanessa leaned toward Jessica, her voice low but clear for their circle to hear. "Perfect, Jessica. I'm sure Hannah will never forget this moment. What a lifelong memory." Jessica's smile was sweet and venomous as she tipped her empty glass and watched Hannah's shrinking figure. They all believed Hannah was irreparably broken by tonight's barrage of insults and humiliation. But none of them realized this deep wound would soon ignite something far more powerful in Hannah, and that before long, they would pay dearly for every cruel act they inflicted on her tonight. Hannah's heavy footsteps echoed in the suffocating silence, each small sound feeling like a dagger twisting deeper into her heart. Her once simple linen dress, once a symbol of humble elegance, was now stained crimson by the spilled wine, a blotch that mirrored the wound slicing through her spirit. With only a few steps to the exit, as if relief were finally within reach, Vanessa's commanding voice rang out from the stage, shattering the tense stillness. "Everyone, please hold on a moment." All eyes snapped toward Vanessa. The powerful bride now stood illuminated under the spotlights, her expression all faux concern. She swept her gaze over the crowd, feigning worry to command their undivided attention. "I've just received some rather troubling information," she announced, pausing for dramatic effect. "I'm very sorry to say that it appears our guest, Ms. Hannah Jackson, may be carrying a dangerous item." Murmurs of alarm swept the room like a tidal wave. Guests glanced at Hannah with suspicion and fear, their faces lit by hundreds of invisible spotlights. Vanessa continued, her tone theatrically grave. For everyone's safety, I must ask security to thoroughly inspect the gift Miss Jackson brought. We cannot risk the well-being of our other guests." Hannah stood frozen, her legs like lead, eyes wide with shock and humiliation. She couldn't believe her ears. This blatant slander went far beyond anything she'd imagined. Never had she thought Vanessa could be so heartless. Marcus and Ryan exchanged guilty looks as they stood beside her, but Vanessa's icy glare and the crowd's mounting pressure left them no choice. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have to inspect your gift," Ryan said softly, his voice laced with reluctance. Trembling, Hannah handed over her present, a simple craft, paper package tied with rustic twine. A gift she'd spent hours creating by hand for Vanessa. Now it lay exposed to suspicion, as if she were a criminal. Marcus accepted the package gently and began unwrapping it layer by layer, the guests holding their breath and phones raised to capture every moment. A few seconds later, the final paper fell away, revealing a beautifully handcrafted blanket, exquisitely embroidered with delicate, pastel-colored stitches. Instead of gasps of admiration, cruel laughter erupted. "A blanket?" sneered a woman, adorned in glittering finery. "That's the cheapest joke I've ever seen. Oh, how touching. A homemade gift. Just perfect for the charity case," Brittany jeered, her voice loud enough for the whole hall to hear. From the stage, Vanessa sneered, raising her voice. "Oh, dear Hannah, how sweet of you to play the poor, generous soul role so theatrically. Don't you find it pathetic and ridiculous?" Her words struck Hannah like a blow. She never imagined her genuine kindness would be mocked so mercilessly. The blanket she'd poured her heart into, each stitch a testament to her care, was dismissed as worthless trash amidst this display of extravagance. Seizing the moment, Jessica stepped forward, phone in hand, to live-stream the spectacle. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called out with perverse delight, "this has to be the most memorable wedding favor in high society history, a homemade blanket, truly the ultimate luxury gift for the underclass." Laughter erupted again, thunderous and unrelenting. Hannah felt a chill run through her as tears slid down her cheeks, each droplet tasting like shame. Vanessa watched the scene with triumphant satisfaction, knowing she'd broken Hannah completely in front of everyone. But she wasn't done. Raising her voice one last time, she declared, "Marcus, Ryan, please escort Miss Jackson out immediately. We wouldn't want this wonderful celebration to be spoiled any further." Hannah stumbled toward the exit, her steps weighted by humiliation and heartache. Behind her, the laughter and jeers grew fainter, but the ache within her remained all too vivid. And though not one of her tormentors suspected it, in just a few moments the tables would turn, and they would be the ones forced to bow their heads in shame before Hannah, the woman they had so cruelly humiliated on this fateful night. Just as Hannah felt she'd completely broken under the cold stares and cruel laughter of the crowd, a deep, throaty roar of engines suddenly rolled in from outside the hotel, shattering the tense atmosphere that had gripped the grand ballroom. Every guest fell silent, their whispers cut off mid-sentence as all eyes swung to the main doors, where the headlights of a sleek convoy of Rolls Royces were now illuminating the courtyard. Curious murmurs rose, guests wondering which mysterious late, arriving VIP could command such a dramatic entrance. The doors eased open, and from the line of luxury cars descended a tall man in an impeccably tailored black suit, every seam and detail crafted to perfection. It was Julian Carter, one of America's most renowned billionaires, the private magnate behind a global empire, rarely seen in public but universally respected. His appearance sent a wave of astonishment through the attendees. Those who'd been haughty and confident just moments before now parted silently, instinctively clearing a wide path for him as though compelled by natural reverence. Vanessa, still standing on the stage, went pale with shock. She fought to maintain her composure, but her eyes betrayed panic. Julian Carter was not on her guest list. She glanced helplessly at Ashley and Brittany, but they too were frozen, faces drained of color as they watched him stride into the room. Julian's gaze locked on Hannah, small, trembling, clutching the handcrafted blanket she'd brought, now stained and ridiculed. When he was just a few steps away, he paused. The stern set of his features softened as he looked at her with concern and tenderness. "Hannah," he said in a rich, warm voice that instantly hushed the ballroom. "I'm sorry I'm late." Hannah's eyes brimmed with tears as she recognized him, the man she'd kept hidden from this glittering world to protect the simple, genuine love they shared. Her voice trembled as she replied, "Julian, I'm okay." He gently took her hand, his strong grip conveying both protection and love. Then he turned to face the stunned audience, his voice carrying firm authority across the silent hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but there's something important you all need to know. The woman you have cruelly humiliated tonight, Hannah Jackson, is my wife, Hannah Carter." A collective gasp swept through the room like a sudden storm. Those who'd reveled in mocking her now recoiled in stunned disbelief and fear. Vanessa's meticulously planned humiliation collapsed in an instant. She staggered, clutching the podium's edge, desperately trying to mask the growing dread in her eyes. Julian continued, his tone strong and unyielding. "Hannah may choose a simple, unostentatious life, but that does not make her worthy of contempt or insult. I am deeply disappointed to witness such disgraceful behavior from people who consider themselves society's elite." His gaze fixed on Vanessa, Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica, the very ones who had orchestrated Hannah's public shame. They all lowered their eyes, unable to meet the power and conviction radiating from him. Hannah squeezed Julian's hand, feeling warmth and healing spread through her wounded heart. His arrival not only restored her dignity, but proved that true value lies not in outward glamour, but in one's character, love, and integrity. Marcus and Ryan, the security officers, stood silently behind, shamefaced at their unwitting role in the injustice. Marcus bowed his head slightly, showing deep respect to the man who had so boldly defended his wife. In that moment of hushed awe and contrition, Julian and Hannah stood together, a powerful testament that genuine love, self-respect, and dignity always triumph over cruelty and superficial judgments. And as the crowd bowed their heads in ashamed reverence, Hannah finally felt she was not alone, because the strong, loving man holding her hand would always stand by her, protecting her with all his strength and sincerity. The moment Julian Carter finished speaking, the grand ballroom fell into an eerie, suffocating silence. The eyes of every guest, those who had just moments ago reveled in Hannah's humiliation, widened in shock and panic. No one could believe what they'd just heard from the most powerful man in American business. Vanessa, still standing on the stage, trembled as if she'd been struck in the pride she'd so arrogantly wielded. Her gaze darted to Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica, but all three friends now stood stunned, faces drained of color, unwilling to meet her eyes. Julian gently wrapped an arm around Hannah's waist, shielding her with a clear demonstration of her special place in his life. His expression hardened as he continued, voice ringing out firmly through the frozen air. Perhaps it's time everyone here learned an important truth." He paused, sweeping the room with a commanding gaze to ensure no one looked away. "The woman you so cruelly insulted, my wife, Hannah Carter, is co-owner of Carter Enterprises. She holds half of our shares, worth billions, and directly oversees many of our company's most critical operations." A wave of horrified whispers rippled through the hall. The once arrogant CEOs, investors, and celebrities now stood in stunned shame. They had mocked and degraded a woman who turned out to be the most powerful, wealthiest, and most respected among them. A wealthy guest who had earlier jeered at Hannah now trembled so violently she nearly dropped her champagne flute. A tech company CEO nearby went pale, desperate to avert his eyes from Julian's steely stare. Vanessa, the architect of this cruelty, remained rooted to the spot, heart pounding. She could scarcely believe that Hannah, the woman she had contemptuously demeaned, was the real power behind tonight's event. Panic, anger, and regret surged through her. Jessica took a step back, phone still in hand from live-streaming Hannah's humiliation, now hanging uselessly at her side. Ashley and Brittany bowed their heads, unable to face Hannah, just moments ago the target of their cruel delight. Julian pressed on, his tone growing ever more resolute, sending shivers through the room. "Furthermore, I want you all to know that Hannah is not only a brilliant businesswoman, but she also leads and funds dozens of major charities across America. She does this quietly, without fanfare, because she believes true kindness needs no public recognition." His words struck like a hammer blow to every conscience in the room. The atmosphere grew heavier with each revelation, as guests lowered their eyes in shame, realizing they had gravely wounded a woman of noble character and compassion, one whose integrity far surpassed their own. Marcus and Ryan, the security officers, stood behind Julian and Hannah, hearts heavy with remorse. Marcus glanced at Hannah with genuine regret, knowing he'd unwittingly become a tool in their cruel spectacle. Now, Hannah looked up at Julian, her eyes soft with gratitude and emotion. His declarations had not only restored her dignity, but underscored the profound respect he held for her. Julian met her gaze, his hand squeezing hers in a silent vow of love and protection. Then he turned back to Vanessa, his voice icy with contempt, yet unmistakably authoritative. "Vanessa Crawford, what you did today is unforgivable. You have not only deeply insulted my wife, but proven yourself unworthy of the privilege and respect society once afforded you." Those words struck Vanessa like a death knell. The pride and reputation she had painstakingly built shattered in an instant. She could do nothing but stare, overwhelmed by fear and humiliation, as she realized she had become the very target of disgrace she had so cruelly imposed on another. In that crushing, reverent silence, Julian took Hannah's hand and led her away from the now speechless crowd. Their steps were firm and dignified, leaving behind a hall full of once proud people who now bowed their heads before a simple woman they had so badly misjudged. Hannah lifted her chin, finally understanding that her kindness, character, and dignity mattered far more than any fleeting glamour, and she was no longer alone. The powerful man beside her would stand by her side, defending her with all his strength and sincere love for the rest of their lives. "Hold on. Please wait a moment." Every eye snapped toward the voice. It was Tyler Hudson, the groom and a young entrepreneur renowned for his meteoric success. He stepped forward decisively toward Julian and Hannah, his usually surprised expression replaced by steely resolve. Vanessa, still stunned and clinging to her last shred of composure, whispered his name in a trembling voice. "Tyler, what are you doing?" Tyler squared his shoulders and fixed Vanessa with a cold stare, the same woman he'd just minutes ago believed would become his wife. His voice rang out so all could hear. "I'm doing what I should have done long ago, Vanessa, speaking the truth." Vanessa went pale, her lips quivering, unable to form a word. Her once unshakable pride and power were unraveling under the weight of his words. Taking a deep breath, Tyler turned to Julian and Hannah, eyes filled with gratitude and respect. "I realize most of you don't know this, but Julian and Hannah were the very first to believe in me, back when I was just a young man with nothing to my name. They supported me both financially and emotionally when no one else would." The crowd went silent in astonishment. Eyes darted from Tyler back to Vanessa, she who had claimed credit for his rise. Now Tyler, the man they'd admired, was exposing her falsehoods. Tyler's voice grew softer, but more earnest, as he addressed Hannah directly. "I'll never forget the nights Hannah sat with me for hours, helping me craft my first business plan. She asked nothing in return. She simply believed in me and my dreams." Turning back to Vanessa, his tone hardened. "But you, Vanessa, are the opposite. Today, I've learned you're not just cruel and selfish, you're prejudiced and contemptuous of others. What you did to Hannah not only disappointed me, it shamed me for ever imagining a life with you." Vanessa's legs trembled, tears spilling freely as her facade crumbled. Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica nearby were equally pale, unable to speak, realizing the cruel game they'd enjoyed had gone too far. Tyler paused, sweeping his gaze around the silent ballroom before making his decision. "I'm calling off this wedding, now, in front of everyone. I refuse to spend my life with someone who lacks a heart and respect for true human worth." A hush fell over the room, broken only by heavy breaths. Vanessa stumbled forward, clutching Tyler's arm, her voice urgent and broken. "Tyler, please, don't do this. Don't let everything fall apart over something so small. We still have so much." Tyler cut her off with unwavering firmness. "No, Vanessa, this isn't small. It's about dignity and self-respect, two things you clearly don't possess." Vanessa reeled backward, her pride and ego shattered. Guests stood in shocked silence, regretting every careless word and deed that had wounded Hannah. Julian gently patted Tyler's shoulder in solidarity, and Tyler bowed his head to both Julian and Hannah with heartfelt sincerity. "I'm truly sorry for everything that's happened today, and I want to thank you both again for believing in me from the very beginning." Hannah offered him a warm, understanding smile, her voice calm but strong. "Tyler, there's nothing to apologize for. Your decision today proves you deserve every ounce of trust and hope we placed in you." In the profound silence that followed, the three of them, Julian, Hannah, and Tyler, stood together as the truest testament to honesty, compassion, and human dignity, leaving behind the ruin of those who lived by lies, selfishness, and cruel prejudice. The moment Tyler's earnest, powerful words fell silent, the entire ballroom was gripped by a suffocating stillness. The once sumptuous decor seemed to freeze in place, mirroring the sheer panic and despair etched on Vanessa's pale face. Tyler quietly pulled his phone from his jacket pocket, his gaze steely as he turned to Vanessa, the woman he had only minutes ago believed would be his partner for life. He raised the phone, voice cold yet clear so every guest could hear. "Perhaps you all deserve to know the whole truth behind tonight's events." Vanessa stumbled forward, her hand trembling as she tried to stop him, forcing out a fake, desperate smile. "Tyler, please, let's talk in private. This doesn't have to be aired in front of everyone." But Tyler brushed her hand away without hesitation, his eyes now shining with nothing but disappointment and contempt. He flipped his phone screen toward the guests, also being live-streamed to thousands online, and began reading, word by deliberate word. None of what happened to Hannah tonight was accidental. Vanessa and her so-called friends, Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica, planned this in detail, with one goal: to humiliate Hannah, an innocent woman. A ripple of horrified whispers swept through the room. Those who had once admired and supported Vanessa now looked at her in shock and dismay. Tyler continued, raising the phone to display private chat messages from Vanessa's group. "Let's invite Hannah to the wedding, and then make her the laughingstock of the entire hall. Who does she think she is, showing up in that shabby outfit?" Message from Vanessa. He paused, staring down Vanessa with unflinching resolve, as his voice grew even sterner. "And there's more." Vanessa also suggested having security search Hannah's gift to add to her public humiliation, simply because she was the only black guest here. This wasn't just cruel, it was disgracefully racist. Vanessa shook, tears now freely streaming down her once meticulous makeup. She lunged at Tyler, voice cracking with panic. "Tyler, I was wrong. Please stop this. I'll explain everything. Just don't do this in front of everyone." But Tyler only shook his head, warmth gone from his eyes. "No, Vanessa. I once trusted and loved you, but tonight you showed your true self. You didn't just let me down, you made me ashamed of ever believing in you." Vanessa felt her world collapse. She looked desperately to Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica, her former allies, but they all hung their heads in shame, unable to defend her. Jessica hastily ended the live stream, horrified at how far this had gone. Ashley and Brittany huddled together, pale and terrified as they realized their own reputations were now in ruins. Vanessa nearly collapsed, her last strength spent begging Tyler, "Please, think of our future. We've worked so hard for today. I can fix this." Tyler turned away, voice resolute and echoing. "There is no future for us, Vanessa. I cannot spend my life with someone so selfish, prejudiced, and heartless. I'm ending this right now." At his words, the guests erupted into murmurs of judgment. Phones flashed, live streams and social. Media posts of the scandal spread like wildfire. Within minutes, thousands of outraged comments branded Vanessa as cruel, racist, and selfish. Her once proud career and reputation crumbled in an instant. Sponsors and partners publicly severed ties. News outlets splashed the story everywhere, condemning her savage, discriminatory treatment of Hannah, a successful, respected woman of integrity who had simply chosen to live humbly. Vanessa stood frozen on the stage, eyes empty and hopeless, as her world fell apart around her, the direct result of her own cruel, thoughtless actions. Meanwhile, Hannah, Julian, and Tyler stood together, their eyes gentle and understanding. In the stark light of truth, they knew justice had been served, and that those who build their lives on cruelty and deceit will, in the end, always face the consequences. Just as Vanessa collapsed under the weight of her own humiliating downfall, the ballroom fell into a tense, fearful silence once more. Julian slowly turned, his gaze as cold as steel sweeping over every guest, each one lowering their head in shame. That stern look made clear that this was far from over. With a decisive nod, Julian gave a slight wave of his hand. Immediately, a woman in a tailored black pantsuit moved briskly toward him. This was Emily, Julian's most trusted personal assistant, renowned for her efficiency and professionalism. Julian leaned in and spoke a few crisp, determined words into her ear. Emily listened intently, then nodded sharply, stepped aside, and pulled out her phone to carry out his instructions. Less than a minute later, Emily returned and held up a tablet, her voice calm and professional. "Mr. Carter, I've contacted the hotel security team and our media department. They are reviewing all security camera footage and social media posts to identify every person who publicly insulted Miss Hannah tonight." Julian nodded in approval, his voice deep and authoritative. "Thank you, Emily. I want this resolved immediately. No one gets overlooked." His announcement sent a ripple of panic through the room. Those who had laughed and casually hurled insults at Hannah now scrambled in horror, frantically scrolling their phones to delete their hateful posts, but it was too late. Moments later, Emily received word from security and leaned in to whisper to Julian. He gave a firm nod. Emily turned to the security detail with a strict, no-nonsense tone. "Please, proceed." 3 officers in sleek black suits stepped forward toward Vanessa's inner circle: Ashley, Brittany, and Jessica. The 3 women went pale, realizing they were the first targets. Ashley, the one who had gleefully live-streamed Hannah's humiliation, began to shake, pleading as the officers approached. "Wait, please, I didn't mean it. I was just joking. Please don't take me out of here." But her pleas were ignored. The officers gently but firmly took Ashley by the arms and escorted her from the ballroom under the judging, contemptuous stares of the remaining guests. Ashley's smug grin had vanished, replaced by sheer terror and disgrace. Next, Brittany, the cosmetics CEO, was led forward. She tried to protest weakly, her voice choked with shame. "No, please don't do this. I'll apologize to Hannah right now. Just give me a chance." But Julian's voice cut through her words, cold and unyielding. "Your apologies are meaningless. Your actions and those of your friends exceeded all bounds of decency and human respect. You must face the consequences." Brittany hung her head and allowed the officers to escort her away, her once flawless gown now crumpled and pitiful beneath the weight of her shame. Finally, Jessica, the TV host who had doused Hannah in wine, trembled as she was called forward. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to Julian. "Mr. Carter, I'm so sorry for what I did. I'll do anything to make this right. Please have mercy on me this once." Julian met her pleading look with iciness, each word cutting deeper. "Do you realize the pain and humiliation you inflicted on Hannah by deliberately spilling wine on her? And now that the tables have turned, you regret it. It's far too late, Jessica." Jessica fell silent, head bowed, as officers guided her out. All around, onlookers watched in solemn acknowledgement. The cruelty they had once cheered on had backfired spectacularly. The remaining guests stood in quiet reflection, fully aware that they had just witnessed a profound lesson in dignity, character, and respect. No one dared challenge Julian's actions. They recognized the justice of his response. Julian turned back to Hannah, his expression softening. He took her hand and spoke quietly. "Hannah, I'm so sorry you had to endure all of this, but I promise you, no one will ever hurt or insult you again." Hannah looked at him with deep gratitude and trust. She smiled gently, feeling the burden of the evening lift from her shoulders. At that moment, in the hushed grandeur of the ballroom, the 2 of them stood united, proof that true justice belongs to those who live with integrity, kindness, and sincerity. Just as those who had insulted Hannah were led away in shame, the ballroom's atmosphere began to clear of cruelty and pretense. Julian gently squeezed Hannah's hand, gazed into her eyes with tender warmth, and softly said, "I think it's time you return to this room in the way you deserve most." Hannah smiled, her confidence and strength shining in her eyes. She nodded, and Julian signaled to Emily, his assistant, to step forward. Emily quickly approached and spoke respectfully to Hannah. "Mrs. Carter, we've prepared a private room for you to change." Grateful, Hannah followed Emily toward the prepared suite. As she passed through the ballroom, every guest watched her with admiration and curiosity. No one dared sneer or look down on her now, for they all recognized her true worth and dignity, the woman they had once hurt. A few minutes later, the grand doors opened again, and Hannah Roch entered with grace and power. She had swapped her simple linen dress for an exquisite white silk gown that gently hugged her slender figure, giving her an air of effortless elegance. Her glossy black hair fell freely over her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with renewed confidence and strength. The moment Hannah appeared, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Guests who had been bowed in shame now stood tall and bowed respectfully as she passed. There were no whispers, no prying stares, only deep admiration for the woman who had emerged from her trial with such dignity and courage. Julian stepped beside Hannah, draped his arm around her with pride and affection, and together they walked to the center of the room. At once, every guest rose to their feet, their applause genuine and heartfelt. Across the hall, Tyler Hudson, the jilted groom, approached quietly, his expression earnest. He bowed to Hannah and Julian, then spoke with heartfelt sincerity. "Hannah, I want to offer you my deepest apology. I was foolish and negligent to let Vanessa and the others use me to hurt you. I am deeply ashamed of myself and cannot forgive my own stubbornness." Hannah placed a gentle hand on Tyler's shoulder, her voice calm and forgiving. "Tyler, I don't blame you. You were part of a plan you didn't even know existed. What matters is that you had the courage to stand up for truth and right. That is truly admirable." Tyler was visibly moved and looked up at her with profound gratitude. He nodded, eyes bright with sincere appreciation. "Thank you, Hannah. Your forgiveness and noble character have awakened me. I promise this will never happen again." Julian smiled approvingly and spoke to Tyler with encouragement. "Tyler, I'm confident that from now on you will be stronger and more dependable than ever. We've always believed in your abilities and integrity." Those words gave Tyler renewed faith in himself. He bowed again in respect and gratitude, then stepped back to let Hannah and Julian, now the symbols of kindness, justice, and true strength, take the spotlight. The room seemed to glow anew with Hannah's radiant, commanding presence. Guests moved forward, offering heartfelt apologies and admiration. One by one, they conveyed their remorse and respect, acknowledging the wrongs they'd done. In that warm spotlight, Julian gently squeezed Hannah's hand, his eyes brimming with pride and love. Leaning close, he whispered softly, "See, Hannah, the light of kindness and dignity always outshines everything else. And you are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known." Hannah lifted her gaze to Julian, her eyes sparkling with happiness and fulfillment. In that moment, she not only stood tall before the very people who had underestimated her, but also proved once and for all that a person's true value lies not in flashy appearances, but in their soul, their character, and the genuine kindness they share with the world. Bathed in that warm glow, Hannah and Julian stood together, a living testament to justice, compassion, and the power of sincerity and noble character. From that moment on, Hannah Carter would be remembered not only as a powerful and affluent woman, but as an enduring symbol of self, respect, and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. After heartfelt apologies had been exchanged, and Hannah's radiant presence once again filled the ballroom with its quiet power, the atmosphere of the celebration was reborn in a new light of compassion and awakening. Every guest, once weighed down by deep prejudices, now reflected in silence, fully aware of their own mistakes. No one spoke of Vanessa or her former allies anymore. They had been forgotten like shadows before a blazing sunrise. In that moment, Julian gently stepped up to the podium at the center of the hall. His eyes shone with conviction, and his voice rang out, strong yet tender, commanding everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening began as a celebration of a wedding, but as we all know, it's often the most unexpected events that reveal a person's true character and the essence of life. He paused, looking earnestly into their eyes before continuing sincerely. What happened tonight is a clear testament to something we so often forget. A person's true worth is never measured by outward glamour, status, wealth, or skin color, but by their kindness, moral character, and inner strength. Julian's words sounded like a clarion call, and the audience fell into a deep, emotional silence. Those who had judged Hannah so thoughtlessly now felt the weight of their error, recognizing how wrong they'd been to judge someone by appearances and narrow-minded biases. Turning to Hannah, standing beside him with serene dignity, he said with warmth and admiration, "Hannah is not only the most wonderful wife I could ever hope for, she is the heart, soul, and driving force of Carter Enterprises and of my life. She has quietly shared kindness, forgiveness, and an incredible inner strength that few could match." Hannah's eyes glistened with gratitude and love as she gazed at Julian. He addressed the guests with even greater resolve, underscoring the night's most important message. From this moment forward, I hope each of us will remember tonight's lesson. We must rise above prejudice, racism, and the superficial standards society imposes. Only then can we truly live up to the definition of human being. As Julian finished, the entire ballroom rose in heartfelt, spontaneous applause, a powerful wave of enlightenment and respect. Wealthy business leaders, celebrities, and dignitaries alike turned to Hannah with genuine admiration for the woman who had faced the harshest trials with unflinching dignity. Near the back, Tyler Hudson also listened intently. He bowed his head in quiet thanks, moved by the lesson he'd learned tonight. He knew that from now on, he would live a different life, one guided by sincerity, integrity, and respect for others. What had been a lavish affair celebrating luxury and prestige had transformed into a solemn, meaningful tribute to Hannah and Julian, the true symbols of compassion, moral conviction, and equality. Hannah stepped forward, took Julian's hand, and together they stood before the awestruck crowd. In that poignant moment, she spoke softly but with unwavering strength. "I truly thank each of you for understanding and embracing tonight's most important message. I hope that after this we will never repeat the same mistakes. Let us always look at one another's hearts and worth, because only then can we make this world a better place." Her words moved everyone deeply. Under the sparkling crystal chandeliers, Hannah and Julian were no longer just a power couple. They had become living emblems of awakening and humanity's highest values. The air buzzed with renewed faith, hope, and the determination to change. That night, as the guests departed in thoughtful reflection, the event became more than just another social scandal. It became a profound statement on kindness, dignity, and the true worth of every individual, beyond all societal prejudices. Standing beside Julian as the last guests filed out, Hannah felt a deep sense of peace and joy. She understood that from this moment on, she would be remembered not only as a successful businesswoman and a woman of means, but as a powerful inspiration for compassion and positive change in society. And so, under the soft glow of that Miami evening, Hannah's story did not end with a personal victory. It became a vivid testament that true value and equality reside in every person's heart, whenever we choose to open it with genuine understanding and grace. Have you ever experienced or witnessed something like Hannah's story? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this inspiring story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more uplifting tales. Thank you for being with us.